to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and you're about to listen to a alcohol reduction hypnosis session. Now, it's linked to wine, but it doesn't have to be wine. It just happened to be the case with this particular client who had got into a habit of drinking several times during the week and quite often would drink a bottle of wine during a weekday, and they wanted to change that. Now, they weren't addicted. They weren't an alcoholic. They just wanted to have a better relationship with alcohol than what they had been currently experiencing. This uses what's called a pattern interrupt. A pattern interrupt is when you introduce something new or surprising to what is normally an autopilot decision. Now, for a lot of people that drink, they know exactly what they drink, where the drink is, they know how they pour the drink into a glass, and they can do all of that on autopilot without really thinking. So if you introduce a few things that then create surprises or inconsistencies, that becomes a pattern interrupt to develop new habits and changes. Now, this particular client's favorite wine was Chardonnay, and she would quite often drink a bottle on a weeknight. But she absolutely could not stand a different variety of white wine called Pinot Grigio. She couldn't stand it. It didn't connect with her taste buds. She didn't like it. Now, what we do in the session, and then she followed up and did this in real life, was to buy 2 bottles of wine in her local supermarket, a Chardonnay that she would normally have, and then the Pinot Grigio that she couldn't stand, that even if she was given it as a gift, she would not drink it. Now, that was important. What you'll hear in the session, and then what she did in reality, is pour the Chardonnay away. That's a surprising thing. It creates the brain to think, why am I doing this? Because normally I would drink this. So it sets a new relationship that they can take it or leave it. And then pours the Pinot Grigio into the Chardonnay bottle and puts it in the exact location that it would normally be. Now, here's the interesting thing. When the client then goes back to that wine on autopilot, it will take a second or so, and then she'll realize, this looks like the Chardonnay, but it contains the wine that she doesn't want. And each time that thought followed by, I don't want that, takes place, it's interrupting the pattern. Now, this is a self-enforced boundary. Of course, she could just go to the supermarket and get a different new bottle of Chardonnay. But that isn't the point. The point is that she knows it's a self-created boundary and that she is choosing to stick to this boundary to have a better relationship with wine. But it's easier to do that if the friction is, you've got to go to the store and buy a new one. That would take 15 minutes or so. Now, that friction is enough to break out of any, let's say, compulsions or cravings or instant urges. If you've got that friction, if you don't have that friction there, then before they know it, they've already had a sip and then it feels like it's too late. So by creating a pattern interrupt where the perception collides with reality, it then gives them a window. Now, what they really wanted is to have the occasional drink in social situations on a Friday or Saturday, and you'll hear those suggestions. At the core, this is a hypnosis session all about renegotiating a relationship with alcohol based on what they actually want rather than what they just have been doing. So if you can connect to that idea, you might get some value from this session. But there might be certain things that don't quite fit you. It might be that you love Pinot Grigio and don't really like Chardonnay, or it might be that you don't drink wine at all and you drink beer or a spirit. At its core, it's about changing the relationship. So feel free to replace anything with things that are more relevant for you, or just ignore any suggestions that don't quite resonate. But if you do like the idea of having a bespoke session created specifically for you, There will be a link in the description where you can schedule a free consultation call. We'll have a chat over Zoom, and who knows, we might end up working together rather than you just listening to a recording. For now, though, you might really get some value from this session, even though it was created for someone else. So find a quiet, comfortable place where you're not going to be distracted or disturbed. Relax and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in, and as you breathe in that resourceful feeling of calm and relaxation, and as you exhale, feel a wonderful feeling of release, as if any tension, stress and worries are starting to leave your body every time you breathe out. Feel your eyelids getting heavier and more relaxed, and allow yourself to position your body in such a way that makes it easy to get more and more comfortably relaxed now. In fact, think of a color that represents pure relaxation. Maybe a bright color like sunshine, and imagine breathing in that color of sunshine. A wonderful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just allow anything to be released that would be useful to release. Any tension, any stress, any worries. Just imagine it leaving your body like shadows in your outward breath. Breathing in relaxation, exhaling tension. Each breath takes you deeper and deeper relaxed. In fact, the deeper you breathe, the more relaxed you feel. And the more relaxed you feel, the deeper you breathe. As your body relaxes, your imagination awakens. And I want you to imagine a wall of memories. You remember those old pin boards. Just imagine something like that in your imagination, but filled with memories of you beside water. Walks by a river or a stream, looking out on a lake, and see memories of you on beautiful beaches. Allow one memory to start to become more prominent. You on a beach looking very relaxed. As you focus on that memory, imagine floating up and going inside that memory. Feel what it would feel like to be on that beach, wearing whatever clothing is appropriate to be on that beach. Imagine feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin. Hear the gentle breaking of waves on the shore. And because it's your memory, just imagine no one else is around. A private beach just for you. And perhaps you could imagine a lounger, a blanket, perhaps a cabana, the kind of place on that beach where you could deeply relax now. And I want you to assess there in that moment of relaxation that you don't need alcohol to feel relaxed. There is a combination lock of relaxation that exists for you. A certain amount of muscle tension or relaxation, a certain way of breathing, a certain pace of inner dialogue that enables you to relax with or without alcohol. And I want you to notice how throughout your life you've created unconscious rules as to what you drink, when you drink, and how much you drink. I want you to get a sense that throughout your life, drinking in the daytime has been the exception and never the rule. There is something about daytime that means the same alcohol loses its desire. It just isn't appealing for you. And I want you to connect to that feeling that alcohol exists and you have no desire for it. And when you can connect to that feeling, let me know by nodding your head. That's it. I want you to get a feeling that alcohol was never an addiction, never a compulsion, never something you were dependent on. In fact, for most of your life, it isn't even take it or leave it. It's just leave it. I want you to get a sense that only a tiny part of your life had a place for alcohol to exist. And even then, it wasn't all alcohol. As I count down from 5 to 1, I want you to imagine drifting off into a dreamlike sleep. And imagine that you're back in your own home. 5, eyelids getting heavier. 4, jaw getting looser. 3, just feeling relaxed in your neck and your shoulders. 2, arms and legs feel limp, loose and heavy. And then 1, drifting off on that beach into a dreamlike sleep, where you could imagine being in your own home on a weekday night. And I want you to imagine that even if it's the evening, you have no desire for spirits. You have no desire for a cocktail. There is no desire for certain types of white wine like Pinot Grigio. All of this is evidence that you are already discerning about what you drink and when you drink and how much you drink. You can't recall a weekday evening when you had 3 bottles of wine. And I want you to get a feeling that there is just one final frontier. One final update to your own internal boundaries. I want you to get a sense that for a while, you've been believing a false belief. You've believed on a weekday that somehow you needed You needed a glass of wine to help you relax on a weekday evening. And that was never true. Because when someone needs something, they can't live without it. What is true is that there was a period of time where you wanted it, but you didn't even want it that badly. So let's go on a thought experiment. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to go into your regular supermarket and to buy your favorite type of wine, maybe a Chardonnay or something else, and then perhaps a wine that you feel a sense of revulsion or disgust, the kind of wine that makes you not want it at all. And maybe that's a bottle of Pinot Grigio. I want you to imagine buying both. And when you return, let's do a ritual. I want you to imagine opening the bottle of Chardonnay and intentionally pouring it down the sink, linking it to the idea that this now creates a line in the sand where something has changed. And once you've imagined pouring it down the sink, the bottle is now empty. Let me know by nodding your head. That's it. And now imagine opening the bottle of Pinot Grigio and pouring that wine, maybe with a funnel, into the bottle of Chardonnay. So now the bottle of Chardonnay contains a wine that you do not like. And I want you to imagine closing the bottle, maybe screwing it shut, maybe putting a bottle top on it, and putting it back in exactly where it would have been kept if it was that bottle of Chardonnay, maybe the fridge, maybe somewhere else. And I want you to imagine looking at it in that location, seeing it as Chardonnay, but knowing it's the Pinot Grigio inside. And I want you to see what thoughts come up. Thoughts like, I don't want that. I would never drink that. But I want you to give yourself permission that during a weekday, you have full permission to go to the supermarket, to buy whatever wine you want, to pour it, to drink it. But the price of admission is to drink the wine you don't like first. Not to punish you, but as a way of you assessing how important or not it is to drink wine. And you might be surprised that every now and then you open that refrigerator on autopilot, you see the wine, and then you recall it contains the wine you don't like. And so the fridge door closes, and you will feel a sense of temporary confusion or uncertainty, which is wonderful. Because this is where new neural pathways are formed, where new habits are built. And I don't know if you will pour yourself a refreshing glass of water, or have a hot drink, or even a juice, or perhaps feel no desire to drink anything at all, and just do something else instead. Not because you have to, but because you're choosing to. Because if the price of admission is to simply drink wine you don't like, and you're not willing to do that, it means that you were never that bothered about drinking wine anyway. And I want you to imagine, maybe it will be days or weeks, until you stop even looking in the refrigerator, before you build new habits, before it just doesn't matter anymore. And now switch your attention to the weekends. In the same way you had a false belief that you needed wine to relax, you're also carrying a belief that you need wine to enjoy the weekends as a reward. And I want you to imagine, just for the next few weeks, just to see how easy it is to find alternatives like alcohol-free drinks, refreshing soft drinks, or just water. So if it's a weekend evening, instead of a bottle, it's a glass. The price of admission to have a glass of what you do want is a glass of what you don't want. And if you're not willing to pay that price of admission, it means that wine is not that necessary for you. If your unconscious agrees, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to imagine being in the kind of place you might be on a weekend. Maybe a restaurant, maybe a bar, maybe a guest in someone else's home. And just remember that it is you giving yourself this rule, simply as a way to change neural pathways that have been repeated hundreds, if not thousands of times. And sometimes all it takes to break a pattern is to do something different. I want you to think back, perhaps 14 or 15 years ago. There was a time when you were a smoker. And then there was a time that you weren't. And notice how quickly your brain went from doing certain things to doing other things. There was a point in time where you wanted something badly and then didn't want it anymore. There would have been a time that you would have bought cigarettes, and then a time when you didn't. There would have been a time when you have been offered and then accepted, and then a time when you were offered and you declined. I want you to think about how subtle those differences are, and yet those tiny differences made all the difference. At its core, something you did want you no longer wanted. Not because the thing changed, but because of how you thought about that thing. I want you to get a sense that wine is not relaxation. Wine is a depressant. It can feel like relaxation. But if alcohol was so good at relaxing, people would sleep better after alcohol and they sleep worse. And if alcohol was crucial to fun and enjoyment, why is it that so many arguments, conflicts, aggression sometimes are linked to those times when people are drinking? I want you to update your own thoughts on what alcohol truly means for you now, and the kind of relationship you want with alcohol. And imagine yourself in the next few days and weeks. Notice what you're doing differently. What you're doing on an average weeknight. That means you can dial down those thoughts of work without needing a glass of wine. I want you to imagine yourself on a weekend, enjoying perhaps an alcohol-free beer or a nice soft drink, and still having just as much fun, just as much connection. And every time you think of drinking on a weekday or a weekend, and every time you think, if that's what it takes to drink, I just don't want it, you will feel a sense of liberation and pride that you are already changing your neural pathways so that in the future, drinking feels not like a habit or a necessity, purely an option. And one of those options is not to drink at all. And I want you to get a sense that this makes wine, if you do drink, more enjoyable, knowing that you don't need it if you choose to drink it. Once those updated thoughts, ideas, stories, and beliefs have changed, and you're ready to step into a new identity, an identity of discernment and freedom, let me know by nodding your head. And then drift back onto that beach. And just imagine someone offers you a glass of wine. And think how easy it would be to say no. And then imagine yourself on an evening, and a thought pops into your head. Somewhere in the world, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and I don't drink wine at 9 o'clock in the morning. And as you hold that thought, you realize you are closer than ever before to a new relationship with alcohol. A relationship on your terms that aligns with your priorities, that takes your life in the direction that you desire. And as you hold that thought, it's time to drift back through that memory on the wall, back into your body. And very soon I will count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. But for now, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, connect and calibrate into the here and the now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.